Continuing with the Reformation, we've moved from what Martin Luther has done to kickstart this process in our first video. And now here, what we're trying to understand is how the Reformation expands out of Europe. How does it get to the country of England, and how the Reformation is going to change the course of history in England for Catholicism, and what happens as the Reformation begins to expand and affect other countries in their own unique ways. So, the question of how does England move from a Catholic country to a Protestant country all revolves around the life of King Henry VIII of England. Henry VIII becomes King of England in the year 1509. Now, he in 1509, has been a devout Catholic. As we get, what am I doing? 8 years later, 8 years later, 1517, when Luther is nailing his 95 Theses at the Castle Church door in Wittenberg, King Henry VIII says, no, these are wrong. I don't like these. He's attacking Luther's ideas. So again, how does England become Protestant? It's not looking great for the Protestant cause here in England under the reign of King Henry VIII. However, Henry VIII needs a male heir to the throne. He's tried real hard with his wife, and all they've been able to do so far is produce a daughter. Henry VIII wants a male heir. He wants a son to make sure that his succession will go from Henry VIII to his son. He wants to avoid, and he does not want to have to fight a civil war or have his daughters or his kind of kingdom be torn asunder by a civil war like his father had to fight. Henry Tudor fought the House of Lancaster in the English War of the Roses to be able to find out who would become the new the new family to take over the throne of England. The Tudors won, so Henry VIII does not want to have a civil war just like his father had to do. So he needs, it's not a want, he needs a male heir to the throne. So that's what's driving all the actions that are about to take place. With his 42-year-old wife, Catherine, they've only been able to produce a daughter named Mary. And this is not for the lack of trying on Henry and Catherine's part, but all they've been able to have is Mary. Henry, again, needs a male heir. It looks like his wife is not going to be able to provide that for him. And so, very simply, Henry VIII wants to divorce his 42-year-old wife to get a younger wife in order to be able to have more opportunities to produce an heir, particularly a male heir to the throne. So the old beat-up Ford pickup truck in Catherine is being traded in for the hot new young sports car, because that's how Henry VIII is viewing these women, and disposable. So simply, that's all he wants. So very simple thing. If we want to simplify this whole thing, how does England become Protestant? Hint, wink, and nudge. Henry VIII wants a divorce, right? And this is going to set the stage for everything that's about to happen. Now remember, all right, for all the good Catholics who are listening in on this, the Catholic Church doesn't allow divorce. So he can't go and just go and do that, right? And so you can't just go and divorce it. You're married for life. So Henry, understanding this, he understands that there's also a back door out of this. The Catholic Church does allow for annulments of the marriage. So Henry VIII wants to get his marriage to Catherine annulled. Annul, in literal sense, means to set aside. Basically, it's to wipe that marriage away. It never happened in the first place. The Catholic Church has rules set up to where you're not allowed to marry certain people. You can't marry. I think you can't. Third cousins are okay. You can't. I think second cousins are okay at this point. But again, the issue is not that Henry wants to annul the marriage, is that the Pope says no. The Pope won't grant the annulment, and the Pope won't grant the annulment for several reasons. Reason number one was that Catherine, before she married Henry VIII, was married to Henry VIII's brother Arthur. Arthur died. And then so Henry VIII said, I would like to marry my sister-in-law. I would like to marry my brother's wife. Now, the Bible, specifically the book of Leviticus, specifically says in the Bible that you are not allowed to marry your brother's widow. It's in there black and white in the Bible. So Henry VIII had to go get special dispensation from the previous pope, Pope Julius, to eliminate any of these technicalities to allow that to happen. So Henry VIII has already gone through a lot of steps just to get married to Catherine in the first place. And why he wants to be married to Catherine is that she is very politically connected. Right? Her nephew is Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, the most powerful person in all of Europe. So this is why, again, reasons why Henry would want to have been married to Catherine. But now other issues start playing in there because, again, Catherine is the aunt of the Holy Roman Emperor. You don't just want this aunt having her marriages wiped away because of the whims of the King of England. The new pope is Pope Clement, and he really doesn't want to deal with Henry VIII's annulment because he's dealing not only with the vicious attacks from Luther and the Habsburg Valois struggles over Italy, but he also has the issue of Charles V has just invaded over the Alps and sacked and captured Rome in 1527. So Charles V is really right outside the doors of St. Peter's, right outside the door of the Vatican. So uh, Charles is right there watching Pope Clement, making sure that, hey, if you do anything wrong, the Pope, any power any that he has left is going to be wiped away very simply and quickly. But also the idea that Pope Clement, if he grants this annulment, he's going to be playing right into the hands of the criticisms of Luther and the Protestants about the Pope kind of worrying more about worldly and political things than correct Catholic dogma stuff literally in the Bible. So all this is to say is that Henry VIII wants a divorce. Pope won't grant the annulment. Now we're at an impasse. What is Henry VIII going to do? This large fellow is Henry VIII, and so all the stuff that's about to happen is people are going to be fighting over this guy, and this guy says that he wants a new wife, right? Because the his wife is not giving him an heir. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, is not be able to is only been able to have the eldest daughter Mary. So now Henry wants an annulment from the Pope. Pope won't grant to him. What is Henry VIII going to do? So Henry VIII, if the Pope won't grant his annulment, he says, I am going to take it upon myself to end his marriage. So he calls Parliament into session and he asks Parliament to help end the Pope's power in England. And Parliament looks around and says, okay. Very quickly, they pass the Act in Restraint of Appeals, the Act for the Submission of the Clergy, and the Supremacy Act of 1534. Basically, all these things, we're simplifying things a lot, is goes and cuts the Catholic Church away from the Pope in England and creates a new Church of England, which is pretty much Catholic, except the head of this new Church of England is now King Henry VIII. This parliament is referred to as the Reformation Parliament because they literally go and pass 1, 2, 3 laws to be able to go and make it so that there is no longer a Catholic Church in England. There is exactly the same church with all the same worship and all the other stuff, but it's now under a new branding of the Church of England. Importantly, this new church has the king is Henry VIII, in charge. So very simply, this should be a very simple question. What happened? What are the consequences of the Reformation Parliament? What does Henry VIII want? He wants a divorce. Can't get in the Catholic Church. He's created his own new church. What's one of the big things you can get in the new Church of England? Henry VIII's divorce is granted by himself. So he goes, his wife is now ex-wife, leaves, and he now marries Anne Boleyn, who's 28 years old. Now, Henry VIII has been having a pretty storied and hot and heavy affair with Anne Boleyn already, but the issue is that if they have any kids, they're not going to be true royal heirs. So we're now getting rid of the old wife. You've now gotten Anne Boleyn, and now Henry VIII has his second wife. Some people in England are upset about this, right? They said that you should not just be going and getting rid of thousands of years of Catholic theology just so that you can divorce your wife. Thomas More, who we've talked about before, who's in the Catholic Church, refuses to take this oath to the king, says this is wrong, and he's going to be beheaded because of his refusal to take that oath to the king as the new head of the Church of England. So we've got Anne Boleyn right here. You can go and see up at the top, Anne Boleyn. She's the English queen. And again, she's got a nice B necklace, B for Boleyn. So that is your new Queen of England. Some people, like Thomas More, are unhappy about that, and that's going to cost him his head, and he'll be executed over this. Anne Boleyn gets pregnant. She has a miscarriage and then gets pregnant again, and she gives birth to a daughter. This is the daughter Elizabeth. So Henry now has his oldest daughter, Mary, and his youngest daughter, Elizabeth. Remember, though, what does he want? Henry VIII needs a male heir. So Anne Boleyn is only going to give him daughters. We need a new wife. Henry's going to put Anne Boleyn on trial. She's going to be convicted of having an affair. She probably most likely is, but he definitely is. And so Anne Boleyn is then going to lose her head because of this. So Henry VIII, what does he need? Needs a male heir, needs a new wife. Goes and marries Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour gets pregnant. She gives birth to a son named Edward. So now Henry VIII is happy. He's got exactly what he needs. Problems. Number one, James Seymour dies in childbirth, so Henry VIII is now single yet again. Second thing is that Edward isn't the healthiest child, so he's constantly getting sick. It doesn't look well for him, so Henry VIII needs more sons as backup sons, just in case something happens to the not as healthy Edward. So, what does he do? Goes and gets married yet again. Fourth wife is Anne of Cleves. They straight up just don't get along. It never really worked out for them. And so, to kind of simplify things, they go and very much get a divorce. So, what does Henry VIII need? They don't get along. They go and they get a divorce. Needs another wife. Fifth wife is Catherine Howard. She, like Anne Boleyn, has an affair. Now remember, Henry VIII is also having an affair. So can't have that. Put on trial. She's beheaded. We need another wife. Sixth wife is Catherine Parr. And Catherine Parr is going to remain his wife until Henry VIII dies in 1547. That marriage produces no children. So if you're following along, what do we have so far? We have the eldest daughter, Mary. We have we have the middle daughter, Elizabeth, and the young son, Edward. Now, by the end of his life, if you're starting to feel too bad for these wives, Henry VIII kind of gets a little bit of his comeuppance. He's morbidly obese. He's got a 54-inch waist, and he's suffering from gout and painful boils all over his body. So he doesn't go out as easily as he probably could have. But again, maybe he deserved that? Question mark. So we have our different wives that we have. So this is Jane Seymour. She dies in childbirth. You have Anne of Cleves, who again goes in divorce. Catherine Howard is has an affair. She's beheaded, and then Catherine Parr remains Henry VIII's wife and queen until he goes and dies. So 1536, as Henry is working his way out, Henry VIII has put his succession in order. When Henry VIII dies, his youngest and only son, Edward, will become the king. If something happens to Edward, then his eldest daughter Mary's in line. If something happens to the other two siblings, then Elizabeth becomes queen. Henry VIII goes and dies, and the reign of Edward VI begins when he's only 9 years old. Can't have a 9-year-old in charge. So Protestant officials begin to rule as the young king's advisors. So they're asking the young king, and he's pretty much rubber stamping everything because he's 9. And so these Protestant officials very much push Protestant reforms in England to push the Church of England from being just a Catholic church in all but name only to very much more Protestant along the lines of what's going on with Luther in Central Europe, and then with some of the other Protestant thinkers who are espousing other ideas as well. One of these guys is by the name of Thomas Cranmer, who's a real big deal. He writes the Book of Common Prayer, which is one of the top 5 most published books ever in the history of humanity. It's like Mao's Little Red Book, the Bible, the Quran, and like one of the Harry Potters, and then it's the Book of Common Prayer. That's how big of a deal it is, and this very much becomes a book for uh, the Protestant Church in England. Remember, though, Edward VI, not the healthiest person, so he's going to go and die, which is going to begin the reign of Mary the First. Now, Mary is married to her cousin, Philip of Spain, who's the son of Charles V. Charles V is devoutly Catholic, so that means his son, Philip of Spain, devoutly Catholic, which means Mary, his wife, also capital letter devoutly Catholic. She very much wants to put the English church back into Catholicism. So she's going to persecute and execute hundreds of Protestants. Many flee, get the heck out of there. All right, one of the guys who's unable to is Thomas Cranmer, and he's going to be burnt at the stake for what he did during the reign of Edward VI. His brother Edward Cranmer is going to read the writing on the wall and get the heck out of town. And eventually he and his family is going to end up in America. And then you get me, little old Tom Cranmer down over here in Joliet, Illinois. Mary, again, to simplify things, is going to be kind of maneuvered off the crown, off the throne, and that's to begin the reign of Elizabeth I, who we've talked about a little bit already in the English Renaissance. She is going to choose a middle course between the supporters of Catholicism and supporters of Protestantism and create a new Anglican church, which is going to become the official church of England. The Anglican church is going to have some Protestant reforms. Priests are allowed to marry. You can get divorces, which obviously is a big thing. But if you were to go and attend a Catholic Mass, say Sunday at 8 a.m., and then go to a 9:30 Anglican Mass across the street, in terms of the style of the church, in terms of the church services, in terms of its layout and the songs, it's going to be very, 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 very similar. But again, the Anglican church allows divorces, allows priests to marry, and becomes the official Protestant Church of England. So here we see, I'll put the laser pointer out, Henry VIII, as he's not feeling well towards the end of his life, goes and sets up his line of succession with Edward VI becoming king upon Henry's death. So again, that's how Henry VIII goes and makes England Protestant, all because he wants a divorce. And a lot of people end up dying, all that because he wants a son. Here is Queen Mary, and then when she's forced off the throne, then Elizabeth goes and takes over to reign as Queen Elizabeth I with the new Protestant Anglican Church of England. So that's how England becomes Protestant. We're going to switch gears here for our next video and get into the idea of how the Reformation on the continent continues after Luther with some other new Protestant ideas as well, along with how the Catholic Church responds to the criticisms they've been facing.